Hello, it's 3 minutes after 10. It's me, James O'Brien. Don't know if you remember me before the Jubilee celebrations. We used to spend our mornings together. That feels like about 150 years ago, doesn't it? And, well, they were rather pleasant, weren't they, in the end? I don't know if you were attending many street parties or hanging out with your neighbours, but I did find myself wondering whether we might have a conversation this morning about why we don't do more such community-minded things in the normal course of time. I was also thinking we'd probably have a chat about booing. Do you remember? Of course you do. You've probably got it tattooed on your cerebral cortex. I've slapped you round the chops with it so often over the last few years. My favourite quote from 1984 is the party urged you to ignore the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. And on Friday, we had that amazing moment where Boris Johnson was booed by a crowd of flag-waving royalists, and Conservative politicians and a few sort of social media freak shows came forward to claim that he hadn't been booed at all. It was quite incredible. Or that the sound of booing you could hear was actually drowned out by the sound of cheering that you couldn't hear. It was a magnificent exercise in Orwellian doublethink, and I've got to be honest with you, not something I either expected to hear. I didn't think the kind of people who turn up to line the Mall on a moment of royal occasion, and on this occasion were massed outside St Paul's Cathedral. I didn't think they were the kind of people who would boo any Prime Minister, whether left wing, right wing, or no wing at all wing. But there we are, Boris Johnson's unique nature as a politician coming to the fore once again. But we're not going to talk about that either, are we? Well, at least, except perhaps in passing, because we have for once been overtaken by events. For the really juicy stuff, they normally wait until 2 minutes past 1, if I am at work, or my holidays, when I'm obviously not at work. For most of the last few years, whenever the really significant stuff begins to unfold, I'm often to be found sunning myself on a beach in Saint-Tropez, or the Peloponnese, or Bognor Regis, or some other glamorous hotspot, some other glamorous holiday destination. Not today. Today we're here with a ringside seat as Conservative MPs, of all people, have resisted the urge from the Daily Mail and various other client journalists to move on from Partygate because the public don't actually want to talk about it anymore, their colleagues told us while they were secretly squirreling away their letters of no confidence and sending them to Graham Brady. 6 minutes after 10 is the time. How can I put this politely? Well, all right, I won't put it politely. I'll put it quite impolitely, but we've been knocking about together for long enough now for you to know that I mean no malice by it. I don't care what I think about the result. So please don't be offended when I say I don't care what you think about what's going to happen, because none of us know. I think we can say with some confidence that it is, in part, a test of how many Conservative MPs give a flying fig about even the most basic requirements of standards in public office. To leave Boris Johnson in place, albeit a lot of self-interest will be coming into play for people keen to do so. I mean, whether they're right or wrong, their calculation will be that they think he's best for their electoral prospects. There has to be, for many of them, if not all of them, there has to be for many of them a simple question of whether or not now, for the first time in, I would say 6 years, but let's be gentle with them and say 6 months. For the first time in 6 months, they are actually going to take their moral compasses out of their pockets, give the glass a little tap, and abide by which way the arrow is pointing, because his position is indefensible. In fact, to show how indefensible it is, I thought we'd begin this morning by having a look at what the line of defence being put out by these politicians is. And they're all more or less word for word. So I'm going to pick Oliver Dowden because he popped up first in my inbox this morning, but they will all be cut and pasted from the same general template sent out by, I don't know who does it, the Chief Whip's office probably. I will be voting for Boris Johnson in the confidence vote tonight, says Oliver Dowden. And let's run through the reasons, if we may, briefly, because these will be the reasons that they're all punting this morning. He's demonstrated real leadership in getting the big calls right as PM. Let's just focus upon the events of the last month and acknowledge that he routinely presided over a culture in Downing Street that broke the laws that were made in Downing Street while the rest of the country was doing their best to abide by those laws. So he did not demonstrate real leadership in getting the big calls right. He got the big calls wrong, and he got lots and lots of medium-sized and little calls wrong. I mean, that is not a matter of opinion. That is simply counting. Over 100 fixed penalty notices issued to him, his closest colleagues, confidants and family members for treating the rules that the rest of us abided by with complete and characteristic contempt. But maybe that's not what Oliver Dowden means. Maybe he just wants you to forget all about Partygate, despite the fact that over 50 of his colleagues consider it to be scandalous enough to submit a letter of no confidence. He's demonstrated real leadership in getting the big calls right as PM. So let's have a look at them. Right, he begins with Brexit. Now, today it is reported in Brexit supporting newspapers that the reason why the Northern Ireland Protocol is not working is because the European Union have implemented the terms of the treaty that David Frost negotiated. If there were to be a more blatant admission of abject incompetence, I'm afraid I don't know what it would look like. Not only that, but as we're seeing everywhere from GP surgeries and nurses, restrooms and wards of hospitals right through to our borders and airports and veterinarians and, well, you name it, you're seeing the consequences of the Brexit, which Oliver Dowden believes shows that Boris Johnson has got all the big calls right. Even the Daily Express's polling now is showing fairly epic dissatisfaction with the reality of the Brexit that Oliver Dowden thinks Boris Johnson got the big call right as. I think the word Oliver Dowden is looking for here is he lied through his teeth about it, but I can't admit that the chickens are now coming home to roost, because that would involve me admitting my own complicity and error. So we've got that in place. What else has he got the big calls right as? Vaccines. Well, that just doesn't measure up to even the scantest scrutiny. We came out of the blocks a little earlier than our most geographically close countries, neighbours, but by the end of the game, we were more or less equal. We're middling around the averages of other European countries. So coming out of the blocks a little bit early, great. Let's give everybody a pat. Well, let's give Kate Bingham a pat on the back for that. But the idea that we have somehow left other countries trailing in our wake is, well, it's problematic for two reasons. Number one, we didn't. And number two, why the hell would we want to? It was a global pandemic, not an insular pandemic confined to the British Isles. So anybody human would want vaccine rates to be taken up on an epic rate everywhere in the world, and especially, if you were to be selfish, in countries with which we are most likely to be travelling to and from. So it's not only untrue, but even if it was true, it wouldn't be something you should be boasting about. Ditto the reopening of the country. Any countries not open yet? And by that I don't mean China. I mean any country that is remotely comparable to us, to the United Kingdom. Any countries still shut? Any countries haven't had a successful vaccine rate that are demographically and economically comparable to the United Kingdom? Because if there aren't any, what the hell is Oliver Dowden talking about? And finally, Ukraine. I've seen one cabinet minister claim that he was the first world leader to go to Ukraine's aid, which is, well, the cabinet minister that said it once again leaves us wondering whether it's a blatant lie or just another instant of epic ignorance, because it's simply not true. Joe Biden was there while we hadn't even got our trousers on. But there's no Conservative cabinet member, and there's certainly no Labour front bench member under Keir Starmer. It was a different story with the last lad, I'll give you that, who would have behaved any differently. So how is that even an achievement? Is Oliver Dowden admitting that if he'd been Prime Minister, he wouldn't have gone to Ukraine's aid? Is he claiming that Boris Johnson has somehow done something special or unique? Or is he simply once again pulling the wool over the eyes of voters by pretending that what Boris Johnson has done is in any way remarkable or unique? It's what any decent British Prime Minister would have done, up to and including Sir Keir Starmer. And he goes on, I hope after this vote we can come together and focus on the future. You've been in power, Oliver Dowden, whether you've noticed or not, for 12 years. That's not an opinion, that's just counting. 12 years of Conservative rule, but the appeal to you today is that we can all come together and focus on the future and face the big challenges, united and focused on delivery. I can't believe these people write this stuff. Of course, it's possible they don't. They might just cut and paste it from a centrally produced template. But quite how these people can write this stuff is a little bit beyond me, which is why we're not going to be talking about that nonsense. We're going to be talking instead about what you want to happen. And then, of course, there's the things Oliver Dowden hasn't mentioned, like not attending the first 5 COBRA meetings at the outbreak of COVID, like the PPE farce, like the contracts for cronies. Or I could go on. In fact, I often do, but I need to tell you what the invitation is today for you to ring into the programme. I want you to tell me, we'll begin with people who aren't fans of Boris Johnson, okay? We will include people who are in the course of our morning together, I promise you. But I'm really interested in knowing whether or not you want him to stay because you think that gives you, as a member of the a Labour voter, a Lib Dem voter, an SNP voter, a Green voter, someone who won't be voting Conservative at the next general election. Actually, we need to narrow it down even further, don't we? Someone who didn't vote Conservative at the last election. The last show we did together, last Wednesday, the calls were confined to people who did vote Conservative at the last election. So let's begin with people who didn't. You didn't vote Conservative at the last election. Do you want him to stay, or should he stay or should he go? And it's based entirely upon your cynical political calculation, this, all right? Because I, as a patriot, think he has to. As a realist, I don't think he will. But as if you like, a political theorist, I do wonder whether it would be better off leaving him in charge to fight the next general election with this epic charge sheet of corruption and debauchery raised every single time by every single candidate fighting against the Conservative. So I'm just going to sit very gently on the fence on this one. I'll say it again. As a patriot, as someone who believes and wants the very best for his country, I think you've got to get rid of him. I really do. Even if that means that an as yet unspecified Conservative leader wins the next general election, you just have to get rid with this level of debauchery and corruption. It's like Trump now. Okay, so anybody genuinely patriotic has to want to see the back of him. But park that thought for a minute, because as a realist, I don't think he is going to lose today. And as a theorist, I don't know that I would want him to. If I were to be completely cynical, looking at the road ahead in the next general election, I'd possibly want him to stay. But I don't want to know what I think. I want to know what you think. And the number you need to tell me is 0345 6060 973. Those are the 3 positions I can think of at the moment. Patriot, realist, theorist. There's probably more. And if you think you fit into one of them, give me a quick call. Tell me what it is and tell me why you're there. It's 16 minutes after 10. The number you need is 0345 6060 973. 18 minutes after 10. I also now have in front of me the briefing document that has been sent out to Conservative MPs. If they were to pop up in public today trying to defend the Prime Minister, I can tell you exactly what you should be listening out for. Far be it from me to suggest that it suggests that they haven't actually got an original thought in their entire bodies. But I've got the template, so I possibly... In fact, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to deploy the official briefing template that's been sent out to Conservative MPs while speaking to my callers today, and you have to guess whether or not I'm drawing what I'm saying from the template that's been sent out to Conservative MPs in order for them to parrot the points put forward by the Chief Whip's office, or whether or not I'm speaking off my own back and offering up original and characteristically incisive contributions. 19 after 10. Let's start with Jack, who's in Crosby. Jack, what would you like to say?
Yeah, morning, James. What I wanted what made me call in originally was a tweet from Oliver Dowden. I saw another one this morning from James Cleverly.
They're all the same, aren't they? Almost word for word,
the same,
I think.
But
yes.
His is an absolute revisionism of what Johnson's London was like and continues to be. My sisters are both nurses in the NHS. One recently returning from maternity leave and was looking after a ward of 20 patients on a night shift with herself and 2 agency staff who can't administer anything because they're agency staff. So she had to look after 20 beds on a night shift.
Do you know, it's reported today, a survey of more than 20,000 frontline staff by the Royal College of Nursing suggested that only a quarter of shifts had the planned number of registered nurses on duty. I believe this is all the fault of the airlines for not planning better in advance, Jack.
Absolutely, of course it is, yeah. But I think, speaking to your researcher before, I'm from London, but I live in Liverpool now. But I've been a Labour voter since I've been able to vote. and I'll continue to be. But
what do you want him to do? Do you want him to go today or not?
I think we're in a better position if he stays, because I think they'll just continue to eat themselves from within. So I'm taking the dog for a walk around.
That's right.
Out of breath.
Multitasking.
I think
they say men can't do
it. Starmer's played the long game throughout, I think, and it's starting to show some green shoots. He's been waiting for them to sort of start just going from ludicrous to ludicrous,
yes.
and it started with Cummings 2 years ago, we're still here, and it's getting worse and worse.
And so the longer he stays in part, the more this kind of almost this cancer of corruption in the heart of the Conservative Party will eat more and more of it. I think you've put it really well. And I know that you're a patriotic person and you care about your country, because the counter argument now would be, think of the damage that will be done to the United Kingdom the longer he stays in place. But if it accelerates the replacement, the removal, there's quite a strong utilitarian argument for taking a little bit of the rough before you can hit the smooth. Thank you, Jack. 21 minutes after 10 is the time. Jack calling for him to go, so no need for me at this point in the programme to deploy the briefing sheet that has now been sent to all Conservative MPs. I wonder if you'll be able to work out when I am singing from that particularly pathetic hymn sheet. Peter is in Yeovil. Peter, what do you think?
Hi, James. First-time caller.
Welcome,
always listen to your show.
Very wise.
Lovely, brilliant show. I moved from West London to Yeovil 2 years ago. I was a station supervisor on London Underground.
Okay.
I was like one of those. I was trying to get through to the other day when you were doing the programme about people who've changed their lifestyle completely.
Yeah.
I don't think Boris Johnson should go. And the reason is quite simple. If he goes, the next face won't change anything. We'll still have the same policies. We'll still have the NHS on its knees. We'll still have the police completely destroyed. I was talking to a police officer the other day because it's like I work part time in a well-known DIY store, and there's lots of us who are retired who sort of do the same thing.
Yeah.
The police force is in such a low place at the moment.
Yes,
people don't actually understand how low it is unless you work with the police. There's strikes with London Underground. I'm an ex-station supervisor. Believe me, London Underground is at an extremely low place.
Yes.
Staff assaults are up 25%. It's one of the reasons why I left. Oh. I've had so many friends who have been assaulted because of staff shortages.
Yeah.
The economy, Brexit, it's an absolute hash. Whoever comes in won't change a damn thing. Sorry. And whoever replaces Johnson will just smarm out, and the Daily Express, the Daily Mail, the right-wing media will make them sound wonderful, and they'll get them to a place where they can scrape through the next election. And nothing will change. But if Johnson stays, they're going to lose.
Yeah,
so
I mean that is your calculation, and you have. I mean, it's an important one, and I guess we have to reflect the fact that is what most Tory MPs. I think I can say that. Some, of course, will be acting according to their consciences, but most will be thinking, in large part, about their own electoral fortunes at the next general election, and that would mean that if they agreed with you, he will be toast, because the main reason why they would want him to stay was because they had faith in him delivering an electoral boost to them at the next general election. I have to say, Peter, listening to you, I think I agree with you, but I don't think that the Conservative MPs will, for whatever reason. All this stuff about him being a proven winner and an electoral force, he's not really lucky as a leader. He just does something that no one else ever does, which is he never ever takes responsibility for problems and just sits tight until they go away. It's quite incredible to watch.
I'll tell you what, James.
Go on.
I think you need to take a step back from this.
Possibly.
Have you ever read a book called The Nightmare Years?
No.
It was. I can't think of the name of the author.
Is it about LBC a few years ago?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It was actually written. It was written by a journalist who lived in Berlin between 1930 and 1940. Now, I'm not suggesting Boris Johnson is a fascist. I'm not just suggesting the Conservative Party is fascist. What I'm saying is that a lot of modern media, especially the likes of Bannon and all these people that manipulate people through micro-targeting, are using the methods that were developed during the 1930s. Now, fascism was defined thus: to convince the majority to despise the minority to control the majority. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it does.
And if you look at the communication systems that are being put in place and the way that people are manipulated by media, moving from West London to Yeovil is so interesting.
I'm sure it is, actually.
In terms of the change of people's attitude, because
are you in Rees-Mogg country down there?
No,
not quite.
No, worse, Marcus Fish country. It gets deeper and darker.
Worse than Jacob Rees-Mogg. What? Oh, no, I take your point.
You know, and if you look at people, well, you know what, no one could have done any better. Well, actually, they could have.
Anyone could have done better. I mean, that's the incredible thing. But you're meeting people who have swallowed it wholesale, and you didn't come across that in your previous.
Well, I think West London perhaps had a slightly different attitude.
Sure.
I mean, you know, did everyone forget Cheltenham?
Yeah, of course. Well, yes is the short answer to that. Everyone forgot. You got all the big calls right.
Did everyone forget the fact that, I mean, he stood there and he allowed that Liverpool match to go ahead when we just had another explosion?
He wasn't going to the Cobra meetings, mate. I mean, it wasn't even that he made the wrong decisions.
No,
he didn't make any decisions at all.
He was writing a book because he was Stony Flint.
That is one of the theories. That is one of the theories. Peter, I'm going to crack on only because there's so many people waiting to speak, but you've put a very strong case forward. So we're 50-50 now, aren't we? And I got it wrong with the first fella. He was saying Johnson should go, so I should have deployed all of my stuff from the crib sheet, the official hymn sheet that's now been sent out to Conservative MPs because they're not capable of framing any original thoughts of their own. I got that the wrong way around. But I you know, by way of excuse, I'll point out, as Peter reminded us, there is a tube strike today in London, which I managed to completely forget about. So I set off to work thinking, it's very quiet today. This is nice. Why is the train only going to Hyde Park Corner? It normally goes all the way into central London. And I had my headphones on, which is a stupid thing to do if the trains are looking a bit weird. But I was in, you know, the commuter days that people get into. I was in the commuter days. So I ended up walking all the way to Leicester Square from Edgware Road. So please be very gentle with me today. Finch is in Southampton. Finch, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. First time caller. I love your work.
Well, you're very kind.
So, yeah, really, I was going to say, I can't help but feel quite strongly that I think Boris Johnson should go.
Right, well, just wait there. By backing Boris Johnson, we can choose today to focus on growing the economy, cutting taxes, making our streets safer, and busting the NHS backlogs. Finch, I bet you hadn't thought about that, had you?
No, I'm sure they probably haven't either. It's the same kind of promises they've been saying for years. Yes. But I think that by keeping him in power, it would be more than easy at the next election to say, well, he's not running again. We're a different set of Conservatives. We've got rid of the people from within that, that's causing us to lose trust, or that are causing the public to lose trust in us. And I think by kind of keeping him there, when and if he doesn't run again, it'll be easier for them to say, well, he was the problem, he's gone, maybe give us another go.
So you'd rather he was in the chair when the next election comes around because you think that will make the likelihood of the Conservatives being defeated higher?
Well, no, I'm saying I'd rather he be gone.
Yes, exactly. I think I just said it a bit clumsily. I repeated what you said. That's my curse. By backing Boris Johnson today, we can move on from distractions and get on with the job, Finch. What have you got to say about that?
I would say, unfortunately, all they cause is distractions. With half of the news that comes out with Rishi Sunak and Jacob Rees-Mogg, they're always in the news. They are always causing problems. And
you're absolutely right. Go on.
One of the points I was saying to someone recently is that I think if Boris Johnson were to go, the Conservative Party would feel afraid that now the lens is going to be put on them, and more news like that. So whoever replaces Boris Johnson is now going to be in the spotlight, and they're going to realise it is this deep problem that runs throughout the party.
Beginning with B, I think, is the heart of it all. Even Daniel Hannan writing at the weekend, bless him, honestly, again, the impossibility of deciding whether people are just epically dishonest or epically stupid is beyond me. Daniel Hannan, of all people, who accepted a seat in the House of Lords for his services to Brexit, writing at the weekend that we should have stayed in the single market. You could not make it up. And, of course, this being my programme, we're not. It's coming up to 10:30. Finn's just picking up on that line there, mate, when he says, by backing Boris, this is on the official hymn sheet that's been sent out to all the Tory MPs, by backing Boris Johnson today, we can move on from distractions and get on with the job. So the bloke that gets booed by flag-waving royalists is the bloke who can help the party move on from distractions. The bloke who presided over the culture of partying that's seen over 100 fixed penalty notices issued to his closest colleagues, confidants and family members. He's the bloke that can move on from distractions. I mean, if you were a Conservative MP with an IQ in double figures and this arrived in your inbox this morning, you'd be spitting nails, wouldn't you? And we've got used to the fact that they all think the public are stupid, but my goodness me, they must think that their backbench MPs are stupid in order to cast Boris Johnson as the bloke that's going to help them move on from distraction. He is a walking distraction. He is a distraction in an egg-stained suit. He is the motherlode of distraction. Everything he does is a distraction. He is so much defined by distraction, it's almost impossible to remember what he was before the distractions began. But if you're reading the hymn sheet today, by backing Boris Johnson today, we can move on from distractions and get on with the job. What job? He's been in power for 12 years. Holly Harris is here with the headlines. 33 minutes after 10. I'm just checking these reports. I hope they're not true, especially after that really charming little vignette that he filmed with the Queen this weekend during the Jubilee celebrations. But I'm hearing that Paddington Bear is going to be on the first flight to Rwanda, presided over by Priti Patel. I'm hoping that's not true, and I will bring you updates as and when they appear. But certainly the information I'm receiving at the moment is because he came here via an illegal route from Peru, Paddington Bear is likely to be on the first flight to Rwanda, presided over, but sadly not piloted, by Priti Patel. 33 after 10 is the time. I have a couple of phone lines free because we are being quite strict on this one. We are looking for people who would not really want the Conservatives to win the next general election. Don't get your knickers in a twist. The last show we did together, we confined early calls to people who voted Conservative at the last general election. So it's trying to keep my sample group quite clear. And I want to know whether you want Boris Johnson to win or lose today. If you're just joining us, I'll talk you through where I am on this. I think my patriotic duty, or my sense of patriotism, and when I say I love my country, I'm pretty sure that if I lived in any other free and functioning democracy with a rich history and a cultural diversity, I think I'd feel the same. But I don't. I live here, so I love it. A lot of it. And it breaks my heart to see the damage being done to it by people who claim to be patriots when really they're just arsonists. I said arsonists. I bet you were worried then for a minute. Well, I mean, they're that as well, but I wouldn't routinely say that at 34 minutes after 10 on the radio on a Monday morning. So we'll stick with arsonists. Arsonists pretending to be firefighters is the best way to describe people like Daniel Hannan or Nigel Farage or Brexit hardman Steve Baker or Andrew Bridgen or any of you. Just pick your favourite. Arsonists pretending to be firefighters. I like that, actually. It's quite a nice little turn of phrase. So that's why I think I want him to go. I just think even if he is replaced by someone who has a better chance of winning the next election, he is so awful, absolutely awful now, on a moral level, never mind a political level. He's debauched in every sense of the word. Always has been, but for reasons of decorum and politeness, one hesitates from using some words until it becomes impossible not to. He is debauched. So your love of country should overcome your cynical calculations, but I appreciate that it won't for everybody. So you've got the patriot who needs him to go because the damage being done to the fabric of our nation is so profound. But then you've got the realist who knows he probably won't go. That's certainly where I am. I think he'll be all right today, but I don't know. And then you've got the theorist, the calculator, the one who wants him to stay because he thinks that will enhance the electoral prospects of the party or the politicians that he or she prefers. And whichever one of those you are, I'd love to talk to you today. Liz is in Cricklade, a Liberal Democrat, I think, Liz.
Good morning, James.
Hello.
I'm a many times caller.
You are, aren't you? You'll get a badge if you carry on like this.
Oh, I love badges. Right, I'm very much in the camp of wanting him to go. I very much put the country first. As farmers, I can tell you now, there's a lot of crises ahead of us. And yes, we've been through some difficult crises with this man at the helm, and he's been a disaster. And with what's ahead...
Are you sure that there are crises on the horizon in the farming industry? It's not just the fault of airlines for not making better plans?
No, there's big problems ahead because of everything impacting. But the global food system is collapsing. I mean, it's largely collapsed.
Well, that's not Boris Johnson's fault, is it, in his defence?
No, But rather than doing what other countries are doing and thinking, oh my goodness, we need to protect our food security, he's continuing to destroy our food security.
He's imposing economic sanctions on our food industry.
Yeah, and he's not listening. He doesn't care. I mean, you saw his reaction to the pig crisis.
You are a farmer, for people who aren't familiar with your contributions to the programme.
Exactly. So a new leader gives us a reset. Okay. A new leader probably will have to call an election. I don't believe that there's anybody in that party that does have the big guns of campaigning that Johnson has, and we can't be silly in believing that all of that is eroded. You know, he is a master, and he will still... You know, so I don't think that we should stick with this because we think he's the best hope. I mean, if they want to continue with the Brexit agenda, Liz Truss will win. And I think she will be a disaster in an election. And I can't see anybody else.
I'm quite looking forward to her leadership campaign. Does that make me a very bad person?
It's going to be fascinating because obviously their membership decided. I think from our point of view, for the Lib Dems, probably Tugendhat would be the most sensible leader. But for the country, that would be a good thing if we can bend his ear and say, look, come on, you've got to do something about making sure the country can have enough food to eat over the next couple of years. Then that's got to be a good thing. So I would go with the sensible, looking after my country first. And really, then by making that decision, we're really putting the Tory party's moral compass, actually,
we are
in the public's focus to say these guys are. So if he does win and they do go to the next election with him, then we can go even further on that.
Yeah, you're like, wow, you mean you don't care about this, you don't care about that, you don't care about them, you don't care about her, you don't care about him, you don't care about standards, you don't. I mean, that will be quite a remarkable electoral millstone for politicians to carry, even with the sycophantic support of 80% of the UK media. Okay, I think there's some points you haven't perhaps thought of, Liz. Let's try this one on for size. Hang on a minute. The Prime Minister fully cooperated with every investigation, made substantial changes to Downing Street and installed a new team. Today is finally a chance to move on and focus on people's priorities, Liz, in Cricklade.
Well, that is just not going to happen, and it didn't happen. People are not going to forget that they were locked away for 2 years. People like me who lost loved ones in that time and attended funerals in the most awful circumstances. It's not, my mother-in-law died alone. I'm never, ever going to forget that, never. And many people are in that situation. And also people that did survive. You know, I had my great aunt was sick for weeks in hospital, and we couldn't go in and see her. She survived, but you don't forget those things.
Well, you don't, and I can see why. I'm going to give you the line that MPs are being told to pull out when the COVID crisis is raised in the way that you've just raised it, and tell me whether or not this butters any of your particular parsnips, Liz. We unlocked more rapidly and restored our freedoms more quickly than other countries.
No, well, we know that's rubbish because we were so late going into the lockdown that we
can't be rubbish. It's on the official hymn sheet that's just been sent out to every Tory MP in the country.
We had a longer lockdown, more economic damage, and more deaths than any other country because he wanted to be the mayor of Jaws and let us take
Keep
it
the
on
town open. Okay, finally, our economy is recovering after COVID. It would be extremely harmful to the United Kingdom and to the Conservative Party to launch a distracting, divisive and destructive leadership contest. Now, you have to take that seriously because it's got 3 Ds in it. It's destructive, divisive and distracting.
No, the economy has got a very, very bad slow puncture, possibly more than one slow puncture, thanks to Brexit. But because of the late lockdown and the long lockdowns, our economy suffered so much damage that, of course, it bounced back and it had further to bounce back. But now we're in real trouble. The economy is contracting because of Brexit, the labour shortages, and you're seeing what's going on in the airports. You've seen what's going on in the processing parts and on farms where there's nobody to pick fruit. Well, you have because you're on a farm,
but obviously plenty of people who've never been near a farm since 1979 will have very strong views about why you're wrong.
Well,
and there's Jacob Rees-Mogg popping up on my telly. Incredible.
They must look at what is going on, for farmers, especially in rural areas. We are really struggling. I mean, the farming now is in deep existential crisis. We spoke to a bank manager last week who didn't even have time to get back to anybody because things are so bad for farming like that.
In your neck of the woods.
And that impacts rural dwelling areas, because we invest in these local communities. If farmers haven't got the money to invest in paying for tractors and stuff locally, that impacts everybody in these areas. So,
you'd have thought that was obvious, and do you know what? It was once, and I think part of the context of the conversation we're having today is the hope that it will be again, sooner rather than later. But what the decision today by the Conservative members of Parliament about Boris Johnson's future does to that equation is anybody's guess. Will it make it sooner rather than later that a semblance of normality and decency is restored to the body politic? I do not know. But I don't think he is going to lose, by the way. Gary is pointing out this game of guessing when I am reading from the official hymn sheet sent out earlier today to all Conservative MPs is far too easy. I'm sorry. I should perhaps try and mix it up a bit. Maybe I'll invent some defence lines of my own and you can decide whether they're on the official hymn sheet or not. Let me try that, actually. Let me do something quickly so I can get it ready for the next caller, and then you'll be able to guess whether it's on the official hymn sheet or whether... OK, I'm ready now. Thank you, Liz. Talia is in Penzance, so from Somerset via Wiltshire to Cornwall. Talia, what would you like to say?
I think I agree with what you said just then or before, when you said about... that he's so... I mean, I want him to go tomorrow, and I've wanted him to go, and I've got into this because of him originally at the beginning of the pandemic. But even though he would be... if he was in post when the next election was there, I think it would be better for the country, right. Or not better for the country. It would be better for his opponents, for his
political opponents.
Yes, but I just think if he went now, it's a bit like when Trump, that moment when suddenly something good happens and you think, wow, when Biden comes in. And I just think for so long, and you look at Neil Parish and you don't remember him because he did the wrong thing, he did the right thing.
And he wore the plank over the tractor porn.
There's no distraction.
Yeah.
Sorry?
He walked the plank over the tractor porn, didn't he?
Yes, and you don't. That was so quick and gone. But he's been there wasting all this money because he couldn't admit to it. None of them could admit mistakes. Yes, and Johnson, and it's to me we just need. I don't know what the Conservatives stand for anymore because they've been having to.
Well, I can tell you, can't I? I mean, I've got it all in front of me. Wait there. We got Brexit done, smashing through the deadlock which crippled British politics.
But I just think they've been trying to win at all costs, looking for the popular vote at every moment. And when you've got people leading the country doing that, just looking for the way to keep the power, to keep the fear there, to keep the hate. It's bizarre, isn't it?
And they got Brexit done by doing the thing Boris Johnson had said no British Prime Minister could ever contemplate doing, and lying about putting a border in the Irish Sea. So all these people, these cabinet ministers sending out this cut and pasted nonsense. Shameful. Right, last chance. You have to call this one. Is this coming from the official hymn sheet or have I made this one up? Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay, Talia, I think the point you're missing is that Boris Johnson is a Gemini, which belongs to the air element of astrology, along with Aquarius and Libra. The symbol of Gemini is the twins, which represents a dual-natured personality. So as a Gemini zodiac sign, Boris is enthusiastic and social. He's the life of the party, Talia.
He's dangerous. And I think it's very dangerous that this country has got a Prime Minister that worldwide is considered in such low esteem, and we just need people back that are in it for the right reasons and not for ego.
Or even people who are just a bit less bad. I don't know that I'm ready yet to hold out much hope for people being in it wholly for the right reasons, although I felt Tobias Ellwood's intervention last week was a very, very rare example of somebody damaging his own brand, as it were, for the betterment of the country by telling simple truths about Brexit. He moved very, very early. And I often think here, as Talia's just reminded us, ask yourself what's in it for them. What's in it for them? So during the death throes of the Brexit debates, all of the people painting targets on their back, being attacked by the Daily Mail, attacked by the Daily Telegraph, attacked by the Daily Express, attacked by their own backbenchers, attacked by Boris Johnson, what was in it for them? Nothing. Except a genuine belief that they were acting in their country's best interests. What was in it for people like Hannan? A seat in the House of Lords. For Farage, attention, the attention that he's spent his entire life craving. For Jacob Rees-Mogg, the chance of advancement, despite having the capabilities and aptitudes of a clothes horse. What was in it for these people who've, despite struggling to lace their own shoes, have ended up in senior cabinet positions? So what was in it for the people like Tobias Ellwood last week telling the truth about Brexit? Absolutely nothing, except a clean conscience. I think they're the people to trust. But I could be wrong. It's 10:46. It's Rishi Sunak time. Let's have a look at what he's punted out under duress, presumably. Here we go. You ready? From the vaccine rollout to our response to Russian aggression, the PM has shown the strong leadership our country needs. I am backing him today and will continue to back him as we focus on growing the economy, tackling the cost of living and clearing the COVID backlogs. OK, mate, let's just have a little look at that, shall we? Here is the share of people vaccinated against COVID-19. This is as of June the 5th, 2022. Let's focus on the population share of people with a complete initial protocol. So remember, you're being asked to believe that Boris Johnson has somehow led the way on the vaccine rollout, and specifically the rollout, not the early procurement, the little head start that we got by appointing Kate Bingham. These are the countries that are currently performing better than us on that metric, share of people with a complete initial protocol. The United Arab Emirates, Portugal, Cuba, Chile, Singapore, China, Canada, Vietnam, Brazil, Italy, Japan, Thailand, France and Germany. All ahead of the United Kingdom on vaccine rollout, which Rishi Sunak is suggesting constitutes a reason to support Boris Johnson in the confidence vote tonight. And then he talks about our response to Russian aggression. Now, there is a bloke called Alexander Lebedev who has been sanctioned in Canada for, and I quote, being a key member of Vladimir Putin's inner circle. That was actually a deliberate slip of the tongue, by the way, although it could quite easily have been one of my pretend accidents. I mean, it was an accidental one. It could have been one of my pretend stroke deliberate ones. The day after the general election in 2019, guess whose 60th birthday party Boris Johnson attended? Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? Yeah. So the day after he won a general election, Boris Johnson and his wife went to the 60th birthday party of Alexander Lebedev, a man now sanctioned in Canada for being a key member of Vladimir Putin's inner circle. You may recognise the name Lebedev because he has a son called Evgeny. Or, to you, Baron Lebedev of, I think, Richmond and Siberia, or some ludicrous label like that. So the man who Rishi Sunak credits with an admirable response to Russian aggression is the man who attended the 60th birthday party of a key member of Vladimir Putin's inner circle, according to the Canadian government, and the father of a man that Boris Johnson subsequently put in the House of Lords despite receiving advice from our intelligence services or guidance from our intelligence services reportedly advising him not to do that. And I say reportedly because despite a vote in the House of Commons calling upon him to make public the advice that he received from the intelligence services about the wisdom of putting the son of the bloke described as a key member of Vladimir Putin's inner circle in the actual House of Lords, he's still refusing to publish the advice that he received. So when Rishi Sunak says, and this isn't funny, this is what patriotism sounds like. When the Chancellor of the Exchequer says, from the vaccine rollout to our response to Russian aggression, the PM has shown the strong leadership our country needs, he is lying to you. He is knowingly, cynically, and deliberately lying to you. Because a response to Russian aggression does not involve putting a man sanctioned in Canada for being a key member of Vladimir Putin's inner circle at the top of your must-visit list the day after you've won a general election. Never mind putting his son in the House of Lords against the reported advice of the security services. And a vaccine rollout being some sort of counterweight to all of the corruption and debauchery that Boris Johnson has inflicted upon this country from the seat of power only works as a claim if you are not lagging behind Germany, France, Thailand, Japan, Italy, Brazil, Vietnam, Canada, China, Singapore, Chile, Cuba, Portugal and the United Arab Emirates. So he'll probably win tonight. But there is truth and there is untruth. And if you can hold on to the truth, even if you are the only one, you will not go mad. Anna's in Oxford. Anna, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello, Anna.
Long-time listener, first-time caller, so do be gentle.
Of course I would. You got all the catchphrases in there, Anna. Congratulations. You got a hat trick of catchphrases.
I've got a bingo sheet in front of me here with the catchphrases.
Fantastic.
So I've been always a sort of a Labour, Lib Dem voter. I've never really voted Conservative. And I'm really split two ways about this. So on the one hand, I see the patriot in me wants him to go in the same way that I think you do and many others do, because he is objectively
for the good of the country, for the good of the nation, simply.
Yeah. I mean, he's objectively making the country worse, both with our reputation abroad and domestically in terms of the cost of living and the corruption and the sleaze and everything. However, a part of me is worried that if he goes and the Conservative Party put, I don't know, Jeremy Hunt or someone like that as their leader, someone who has sort of a more presentable statesman-like facade, it'll be much easier for the Conservatives to hide the sleaze and the corruption and the debauchery.
But do you not think... I mean, I'll tell you what Jeremy Hunt said while you were on hold. He literally, it's almost as like you planned this together before you got on air. He said, the Conservative Party must now decide if it wishes to change its leader. Because of the situation in Ukraine, this was not a debate I wanted to have now, but under our rules we must do that. Having been trusted with power, Conservative MPs know in our hearts we are not giving the British people the leadership they deserve. We are not offering the integrity, competence and vision necessary to unleash the enormous potential of our country, and because we are no longer trusted by the electorate, who know this too, we are set to lose the next general election. Anyone who believes our country is stronger, fairer and more prosperous when led by Conservatives should reflect that the consequence of not changing will be to hand the country to others who do not share those values. Today's decision is change or lose. I will be voting for change. Now, I think Jeremy Hunt is a spectacularly mediocre politician, but I do think he's telling the truth, don't you? He wouldn't just be papering over cracks. He is motivated by conscience.
I do think he's telling the truth, but equally I think if he was genuinely motivated by his conscience, he would have come out when the Partygate nonsense started to come out in the first place.
Maybe. I mean, he moved pretty early.
Or when Boris Johnson, said that incredibly awful stuff about Keir Starmer and Jimmy Savile. Like, I think if he was purely motivated by conscience, he should have acted then.
This is unconscionable. This is intolerable. I will not stay quiet while the man ostensibly leading the country, never mind my party, engages in the politics, the beneath the gutter politics. Yes, well, a lot of them are in that category. Also, thank you, Anna. It's a sparkling debut. I think I've worked out why Rishi Sunak is talking about vaccine rollout rather than vaccine procurement. Because, of course, there was a triumph of vaccine procurement. The appointment of a woman called Kate Bingham, you may remember, was a success, a roaring success. We did come out of the traps a little earlier. As the dust settled and things calmed down, it appeared less and less important in the great scheme of things. But I don't know what conversations unfold in Kate Bingham's household, but I do know that she's married to a member of Parliament called Jessie Norman, who served as Financial Secretary to the Treasury between 2019 and 2021. And I do know that Jessie Norman submitted a very detailed letter of no confidence earlier this morning in the Prime Minister. So while Tory MPs reading from a cut and pasted hymn sheet are claiming that the vaccine rollout is a reason to leave Boris Johnson in power, the husband of the woman who presided over our vaccine rollout has no confidence in his leadership whatsoever. Make of that what you will, but it's, I think, a couple of dots that were well worth joining. I'm going to carry on with this for three reasons. Number one, I want to. Number two, it's absolutely fascinating. And number three, the number of people vying to have their voices heard is, well, as is often the case on this programme, is high, very, very high. But there's still room for more. 10:59 is the time. The number you need is 03456060973. We'll just throw it open now. The confinement of the conversation to people who didn't vote Conservative in 2019 or who don't want the Conservatives in general to win the next election, that's now over. So the floor is now open to everybody. I don't know that you can mount an honest and meaningful defence of a man whose greatest achievements are apparently the vaccines and Russia, which I've just demonstrated to you are not achievements at all. In fact, on the latter one, the approach to Russia adopted by Boris Johnson, or at least to the family of a member of Vladimir Putin's inner circle, is spectacularly awful. But come one, come all, what do you want to happen next? It is 3 minutes after 11. I've got that letter that I just referred you to. And listen, I mean, husbands and wives disagree about politics all the time. Of course they do. But this seems to me to be a little more significant than the average breakfast battle. Jessie Norman a long supporter of Boris Johnson, going right back to 2007, and that original mayoral campaign, 2007, 8 and 12, and for leader in 2016 and 2019. When I stepped down from the Treasury last September, you raised the topic of the next reshuffle, and we discussed the potential for me to run a Department of State. I've always been deeply committed to public service, but recent events have served to clarify the position this country is in under your leadership beyond any doubt, and I am afraid I can see no circumstances in which I could serve in a government led by you. He then referenced Sue Gray. He references the Queen's speech and policy priorities that are deeply damaging. He references the Northern Ireland Protocol and the threat to breach it, which he describes as very damaging, politically foolhardy, and almost certainly illegal. And there's more. The Rwanda policy. I'm still seeking to confirm whether or not Paddington Bear is going to be on that first flight to Rwanda under Priti Patel's personal orders. I hope it's not true, but I'll bring you more on that as and when the story develops. It's described here by Jesse Norman as ugly, likely to be counterproductive, and of dubious legality, doubtful legality. Privatisation of Channel 4 is unnecessary and provocative, an attempt to address a political non-issue during a time of crisis, a significant cost to the independent UK film and TV industry. It's a very good letter. There are good people in the party. But as the sycophants and the forelock tuggers read out this hymn sheet of praise for Boris Johnson, their attempts to inflate the vaccine rollout as one of his great triumphs, I think suffer somewhat when the husband of the woman, the venture capitalist who presided over it, and Boris Johnson was right, I think, to give her a blank chequebook, although not quite as right as it appeared at the time. As the dust has settled, that little head start we got has appeared less and less significant. But by giving a venture capitalist a blank chequebook, for once, it was probably the right thing to do. But when that venture capitalist's husband turns around with a charge sheet of why he could never serve in a government led by Boris Johnson, I think pointing out the spousal relationship is not only relevant, but quite possibly significant. Let's hear the Scottish angle, or a Scottish angle, from Billy in Glasgow. Billy, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How you doing there? First-time caller as well.
Welcome aboard.
Yes. What it is, I mean, I'm also talking about your cynical question. Should he stay? I mean, from a
Let's be a bit more generous, cynical. I mean, let's just say sort of, self-interested or political ambition. It doesn't. Cynicism sounds a bit unkind, but politics always looks at these kind of calculations, doesn't it?
In a self-interest point of view, he would better staying for Scotland. At the moment, he's minus 83 in the opinion poll up here.
Is he really? He's doing that well.
He's doing that well, which means if the next general election, he would lose his 6 MPs up here.
Yes.
But from, as being a Scottish nationalist as well, we're obviously a caring party, that's what I believe, we're a caring party with regard to things. And it'd be better for the country if he went to get something in order, because at the moment, everything's going to the dogs.
Well, if we put your top priority as independence, that alone, independence for Scotland, is all you care about. I'm just positing that. I know it isn't. I know you care about lots more things, but I'm turning you into a robot for the purposes of this conversation with one mission. Then what? I mean, then what hastens Scottish independence? Him staying or him going? I don't. Or it makes no difference whatsoever.
I don't think it'd make much of a difference.
No, I don't either.
I think it would improve greater if he stayed, because he's absolutely, well, there are obviously some people who like him, but the things that are going on with the cut to benefits, whereas we've raised £20, a child benefit £20, these kind of things, and we've obviously mitigated the bedroom tax, all these sort of things are just as if we're trying to fight against Tory cuts. That's the kind of thing that seems to happen. And I know I've got family members who had to get a family to help with the bedroom tax because they had nowhere else to go. They couldn't get him another house to move away to, and they had to pay it.
That's going back before his time, isn't it? But he's still carrying that can. I guess there are two broad brush arguments for independence. There are the short-term ones and the long-term ones. And the sympathy I have for the short-term ones are huge. The idea that Boris Johnson is an argument, a personal, walking, bumbling, talking argument for Scottish independence, because why the hell would you want to be hitched to that ramshackle operation if you had any opportunity not to be? And yet that doesn't necessarily address some of the long-term arguments against independence, because, you know, it's not that long ago that Gordon Brown was in number 10 Downing Street, who arguably had much more concern for the Scottish nation in his ideological heart than Boris Johnson ever would. But I know, I hear you, I really do, and I guess a lot of people will be looking through exactly the lens that you've described. 9 minutes after 11 at the time. Rather clever piece by Matthew Dancona on the Tortoise website here. Under that, well, I'll tell you what the headline is: "The Queen deserves a better final Prime Minister than Johnson." That's strong, isn't it? And you know what? You know that I'm not a particular royalist, but I do not have any ill will or negative feelings towards the Queen. I think largely because she's the last royal to not let the light in. I don't know anything about her. If you ask me to make a list of things I know about the Queen, horses, and she keeps her cereal in Tupperware boxes would be on the list. That's how completely successful the control of access to the Queen has been over the last 70 years. When you let the light in, you recognise that they are human beings like the rest of us, and that undermines the historical rationale for royalty itself, for monarchs in general, never mind for a particular one. But the Queen, and to a slightly lesser extent Prince Philip, managed to keep the light out and therefore keep the mystique alive. You can't say that about any of her children or grandchildren. For good or for ill, I think in an internet world and 24-hour news, they couldn't probably have pulled that off from the starting blocks in the way that the Queen has done. But I have no beef with the Queen at all. But I really agree with that. And in fact, it almost appeals to a little bit of me that I didn't know I had, that I felt popping up quite a lot this weekend, like a sort of slightly irrational affection or admiration for that individual, who I've never met, never will, and know absolutely nothing about. But that, you know, that's what pageantry does to you, doesn't it? It pushes buttons that don't make much sense, but that remain pushed nonetheless. And she does deserve a better final Prime Minister than Boris. Hopefully she'll have 2 or 3 more well, maybe not that many, because you'd like a period of stability. But if he were to be the last Prime Minister that the Queen, that served under this Queen, then that would be quite a horrible little conclusion to her reign, politically speaking. And I do think increasingly that they have come as close as they humanly can to expressing their derision for Boris Johnson. I don't know who chose the reading that he delivered at St. Paul's. Did you hear that? We might dig out some bits of that. That was trolling on an epic scale. Whoever made that decision and said, what's Johnson going to read out today? And they essentially handed him a mea culpa, a charge sheet saying you mustn't do these things, and then a long list of things that Boris Johnson does every day. It was incredible. But whether or not it was deliberate, I do not know. And the same for the current Mrs. Johnson's hats. I don't know whether you notice this, but 2 days running she wore hats like satellite dishes, tilted to the right, where he will always be. It was as if she'd brought her own screens to keep Boris Johnson out of her sight. I'm sure that was a coincidence as well, but 2 days running, these big satellite dish-sized hats on the right-hand side of her face when Boris Johnson is on the other side of it. He had to sort of lean around in order to say hello to her, and I felt grab her hand in quite an abrupt fashion when the booing started outside St. Paul's. I'll say that again because I still can't quite believe we witnessed that. And the constituency of people going to St. Paul's to wave flags, booing a Conservative Prime Minister. Incredible. 12 after 11 is the time. 2 phone lines free now. 0345 6060973. David is in Belsize Park. David, what made you pick up the phone?
Well, I reckon, like you've just said now, it's not just the Queen that deserves a better Prime Minister, it's us as well. MPs seem to have forgotten that they're supposed to serve the people. Everyone out here is being so self-serving, so desperate to keep their job and stay on his good side, along both sides of the house, that they've forgotten there are people who depend on this government to save them, to keep them alive, and to help them out in these times, especially as we're coming out of a pandemic.
The business of politics as opposed to the politics of politics being forgotten. Talk me briefly, if you would, why you say on both sides of the house, because I don't share that perspective, but that might well mean I'm wrong.
I mean, this is just what I'm hearing, on the internet, which, as you know, is often...
Well, don't tell me what you found on the internet. Tell me what you've seen with your own eyes and ears.
What I've seen with my own eyes is a lot of Labour people staying quiet about this under the belief that Boris Johnson staying in could be good for them in another election.
Mate, you're not. I mean, maybe like at a low level or an activist level, but not at
just me.
No, not at a parliamentary level. I mean, Keir Starmer said today, of course he has to go. Of course I want him to go, but I don't think he will. I mean, in many ways, some of Keir Starmer's critics think that he's too squeaky clean and that he should get his hands a bit dirtier and make calculations like it would be better for us if he stayed. But I don't think, because you did say on both sides of the House, so at risk of sounding brutal, you can't have both. You can't be digging around in the far corners of the internet and claiming that it's happening in the House of Commons, because it just isn't.
No, you're right. You're probably right there. It's just what I get as a feeling.
Fair enough. That counts.
People seem to have left us behind.
Yeah, I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong, but you sound a lot younger than me. How old are you, David?
I'm 19, mate. I haven't even been able to vote
First general
in the
election. You've never voted in an election before. Do you look at any individual, and I know you can only vote for the candidate standing in your own constituency, but scratch that and imagine you had some sort of magic Uber vote. Does anyone impress you as a 19-year-old man who clearly follows politics and cares about his country?
I mean, not anymore.
What? Not one? Come on, really? Nobody?
I'm just, to be honest with you, Boris Johnson seems to have gotten rid of anyone in the Conservatives that could have really stood up to him at a high level.
Yeah, that's true.
So
simply,
I don't like him. I don't like his cronies. And Keir Starmer, as you've been saying, seems to kind of stand to the side of the road in the hope that we'll eventually pull off and say, "Oh, thank you so much for, stepping out of all this."
Yeah.
And realistically, I don't reckon the Lib Dems are going to win, and
it doesn't matter. I'm only looking for someone or something you admire. It doesn't have to be someone who's likely to govern necessarily.
I don't know, mate. It's
terrible.
As a cynic
how often do you listen to the programme? I feel like I've let you down.
Not often enough.
Clearly. Seriously, I mean, it should be someone. I'm not going to make any suggestions. That would be patronising. But I'd like to think that by listening to this programme, there might have been some little beeps on your radar that had popped up. I think Wes Streeting is quite an impressive politician. I've been impressed by Angela Rayner. Although I appreciate that some people have put enormous amounts of effort into trying to discredit her. Most obviously, of course, the Mail on Sunday. But if you listen to the podcast I did with Starmer and Angela Rayner and see where that leads you, or with Ken Clarke, who admittedly you can't vote for anymore, ditto Rory Stewart. But I just want you to find some humans in the political establishment that you can admire as a 19-year-old engaged man who currently doesn't have any. It's 11:16. Whoa! Now I think we'll get there. Should we summon the Usherwood? Should we do that? Can we get him on a line? I know he's going to be down in the midst of it, down in the thick of it, in the heart of Parliament, banging heads together and gathering up top scoops. But we shall summon the Usherwood nonetheless. Theo, we had a chat earlier about whether or not any more MPs would break cover today, and we both thought they wouldn't, but they are.
Yes, Jeremy Hunt, of course, who made it down to the final two with Boris Johnson, has just come out in the last 20 minutes or so tweeting that he thinks it's time for the Prime Minister to go and will be voting against Boris Johnson in this no-confidence vote between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. This evening in Committee Room.
And another one 14. Who I don't know if you're aware of, which I think is more significant in the last couple of minutes.
Which is, no, I'm not aware of, sorry.
John Penrose has resigned as the anti-corruption czar. Boris Johnson's anti-corruption czar, husband of Dido Harding, seeing as we're playing spouses today, he's gone.
Yes.
He said, looking at his reply last week about the ministerial code, it's pretty clear he has broken it. That's Boris Johnson's own anti-corruption czar. It's a resigning matter for me, and it should be for the PM too. Here's my letter to him explaining why. That's quite a biggie, isn't it?
That is another biggie. But what's interesting, and this is, I just bumped into somebody pretty senior at Conservative campaign headquarters a few moments ago as I was leaving just to speak to you. And they were making the point to me that at the moment, all of those putting in their letters, people like, or saying that they're going to vote against Boris Johnson, people like, of course, Jessie Norman, the former Treasury Minister, Jeremy Hunt, and of course, John Penrose, they all fit the bill of being on the in the centre right of the party,
right.
Leftovers of the David Cameron era. They are not necessarily of the Brexit wing of the party. We haven't seen, of course, Andrew Bridgen and Steve Baker have both called for the PM to go subsequently, but they're not of that necessarily that ilk of the party. And we haven't seen any names, particularly from the 2019 intake as well. Now, Number 10 and Conservative campaign headquarters have been working furiously to get the message out there that actually anybody who would think against voting against Boris Johnson would be making a serious mistake. I've been speaking to a couple of them, James. Now, I've just been speaking to them with this in mind, and I was sent it via WhatsApp as well, the bullet points sent out.
The hymn sheet from which we've been singing all morning, Theo. Are you suggesting that we could now perhaps conduct an exercise in seeing whether or not the people you've been speaking to sound as if they've been reading the hymn sheet that we've got?
Or singing from the hymn sheet that we've got. Should we start with the aria?
Go on.
Natalie Elphicke to start off with. MP for Dover.
Fantastic, Natalie Elphicke.
Well, I think that Boris Johnson has been delivering for the British people. I think he's been delivering for the Conservative Party, and I'm going to be voting for him, and I think he is going to win tonight.
And what do you think he's got above anybody who might succeed him in the top job?
Well, Boris Johnson has been delivering for the British people, and that happens through leadership and a great team. He's got great leadership, he's got a great team, and they've been delivering. If it's COVID, if it's cost of living, whatever the issue that has been thrown at him, he's been delivering for the British people, and I think he'll carry on doing that.
Do you think that it would be a mistake to replace Boris Johnson?
Boris Johnson is the right Prime Minister. He's been delivering for the British people. It's absolutely the right thing to have the vote, get behind him and move on to carry on delivering to the British people. That's what I'm hoping to see tonight.
Did you keep count of how many times she said delivering for the British people in the course of that, 90-second clip?
I've got 5.
5? Oh,
Five
on, let's
delivering
play
for the
it
British
again.
people.
Because, all right, I'm going to count them this time. I'm not doubting you, but I just think, imagine that. She gets paid to be an MP, and we're delivering for the British people delivering for the British people. It's like Bruce Forsyth. Nice to see you, nice. Delivering for the British people delivering. Try again.
Well, I think that Boris Johnson has been delivering for the British people. I think he's been delivering for the Conservative Party, and I'm going to be voting for him, and I think he is going to win tonight.
And what do you think he's got above anybody who might succeed him in the top job?
Well, Boris Johnson has been delivering for the British people, and that happens through leadership and a great team. He's got great leadership, he's got a great team, and they've been delivering. If it's COVID, if it's cost of living, whatever the issue that has been thrown at him, he's been delivering for the British people, and I think he'll carry on doing that.
Do you think that it would be a mistake to replace Boris Johnson?
Boris Johnson is the right Prime Minister. He's been delivering for the British people. It's absolutely the right thing to have the vote, get behind him, and move on to carry on delivering to the British people. That's
7 deliverings and 5 people, Theo Usherwood.
Unbelievable. And 2 leaderships.
Yes, and teams and leaders, we should, I think 7 deliverings. All right, who else have you got for us?
Okay, next up,
Why
Stephen
didn't you say,
McPartland,
just not to criticise you, because you know I love you like a brother. Why didn't you just say delivering what?
I don't know. I mean, it's just delivering, isn't it?
Just for the British people. Carry on. Who's next?
Okay. So we've got Stephen McPartland, the MP for Stevenage.
Okay.
I do think he got some of the big calls right. He got the vaccine rollout right, and I supported him on that. So on this occasion, I'll be voting with him tonight because I'll be supporting him on the cost of living crisis.
Are you supporting? Do you think he's done well on Ukraine?
Oh yeah, he's done well on Ukraine and on a variety of other issues. But I think, at the end of the day, my view is very, very simple. If you want to remove the Prime Minister, have a general election and let the people decide.
So that was Stephen McPartland.
Yeah, not quite as much fun as Natalie Elphicke, who was complaining last week about all the queues outside Dover, of course, caused by Brexit. But she managed to do so without mentioning Brexit. So he keeps saying Anthony McPartland. They're not related, are they? Stephen McPartland got all the big calls right. Vaccines.
Yes.
And that makes, of course, Jesse Norman, the husband of Kate Bingham, who did actually deliver the vaccine programme, his abandonment of the Prime Minister somewhat awkward for these people, I would suggest.
What's interesting about the vaccines part of this and is that actually there's been some private polling done by some people who were previously quite close to Boris Johnson, I was told. And when they asked people about who got the vaccine call right, who made the right decisions on the vaccine, the answer kept coming back, the NHS.
Yeah.
So then they said, okay, but which person got the vaccines right? And they kept coming back and saying, no, it's the NHS that did the vaccines.
Is that right?
And the frustration was that actually from the way, and I was told by somebody who's quite supportive of the Prime Minister, there was a real frustration that actually when it came to the vaccines, just the way that people took it in, it was always coming back that actually it was an NHS victory rather than a personal victory for the Prime Minister, and that he would perhaps be advised to perhaps move on to talking about other victories rather than talking about the vaccines.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Theo, great stuff. Keep in touch, won't you? If you manage to land any more, we shall run them through the lens. And of course, talking about vaccine victories, it falls to me to remind you that the United Arab Emirates, Portugal, Cuba, Chile, Singapore, China, Canada, Vietnam, Brazil, Italy, Japan, Thailand, France and Germany all have, at the moment, a higher share of their population with a complete initial protocol. That's as of today, actually, I think, June the 5th, 2022, as of yesterday. Just a quick thought for the people of Dover.
Well, I think that Boris Johnson has been delivering for the British people. I think he's been delivering for the Conservative Party, and I'm going to be voting for him, and I think he is going to win tonight.
And what do you think he's got above anybody who might succeed him in the top job?
Well, Boris Johnson has been delivering for the British people, and that happens through leadership and a great team. He's got great leadership, he's got a great team, and they've been delivering. If it's COVID, if it's cost of living, whatever the issue that has been thrown at him, he's been delivering for the British people, and I think he'll carry on doing that.
Do you think that it would be a mistake to replace Boris Johnson?
Boris Johnson is the right Prime Minister. He's been delivering for the British people. It's absolutely the right thing to have the vote, get behind him and move on to carry on delivering to the British people. That's what I'm hoping to see tonight.
Just for the record, I still think he is going to win. But if there was a competition for who can say the word delivering the most in a 44-second interview with Theo Usherwood, Natalie Elphicke would probably be favourite, wouldn't she? 7 deliverings I counted and 5 peoples. In a 44-second interview. I suggested a moment ago it was 90 seconds. There were times during that interview it felt like 90 days. But my goodness me, and I remind you again, she actually gets paid a salary for doing that. Delivering for the British people, as Paul points out, he's a Prime Minister, not an Amazon driver. Andy's in Rye. Andy, what would you like to say? Hang on. Before you start, have you been delivering for the British people today? And if not, why not?
I've just been sitting on my rear end doing nothing.
Phase 2, that's you and Natalie Elphicke both. Carry on. Sorry, why did you ring in? What have we got?
Well, in common with a lot of people, enjoyed the Platinum celebrations, and it ended down here in Rye yesterday at 5 o'clock with a Thanksgiving service for the Queen.
Lovely.
And then the service itself ended with the national anthem, and perhaps unusually, it played, or both verses were sung, and the second verse has in it the line asking the Queen or requesting the Queen to defend our laws.
Does it?
And it suddenly struck me. Well,
how does it? Can you remember it? Can you remind us? Just
no, I can't.
No, don't worry.
I was singing off a hymn sheet, which I can find somewhere. But
it's very popular today.
But we all sung off the same hymn sheet, and maybe indeed Johnson did, like he read that. Reading at the service he went to, which was completely ridiculous because he obviously broke all those rules and whatever he was talking about. But anyway, laws. So therefore, we're all celebrating the Queen. What a wonderful, marvellous example.
It's the last verse when she says that. It's not the second verse. I'm just doing a fact check on you live on the radio. It's the last verse. Thy choicest gifts in store, on her be pleased to pour. So let's see if I can remember it right. Long may she reign, and ever give us cause to sing with heart and voice. Yeah, may she defend our laws. God save our Queen.